White House correspondent Monica Alba to kick us off this hour. Monica, let's start with you. It's been just a few hours since President Biden touched down in Tel Aviv. He's already met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So tell us about the president's day so far and what's to come as he sees the devastation firsthand.
Well, this trip, Joe and Savannah, was all about showing solidarity with Israel and literally embracing the country after this tragedy. And we saw the president and Prime Minister Netanyahu physically hug once he arrived on that tarmac. And just now, in some remarks, the president continued to say that he wanted to show this message that the United States will continue to stand with Israel today, tomorrow, and always. But there is such a volatile backdrop to all of this and what the president is landing in. The fact that as he was heading to the airport to head to Tel Aviv, the Jordan portion of the trip was canceled because of the aftermath and the information that we're still working on to learn more about with that hospital explosion in Gaza, something that President Biden has expressed his deepest condolences to, given that loss of life that appears there. But now there are these major questions about who may have been responsible. The president, though, wanting to put the focus on why he made this trip now and why he feels, again, that the U.S. needs to stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel. Listen.
I wanted to be here today for a simple reason. I want the people of Israel, the people of the world, to know where the United States stands. The fact is that Israel, as they respond to these attacks, it seems to me that they have to continue to ensure that you have what you need to defend yourselves. And we're going to make sure that occurs. And we have to also bear in mind that Hamas does not represent all the Palestinian people.
And the president is also meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu and his war cabinet to talk about what happens from here. And then later on in the day, we understand he will be meeting with some family members who lost loved ones in the terrorist attack by Hamas on October 7th. And he may also be meeting with some first responders as well while they're in Tel Aviv. Joe.
Monica, stay with us. Let me bring Raf in now. So the other big story this morning, of course, this finger pointing from both sides regarding that Gaza hospital explosion that has killed hundreds. We've also now seen protests erupt across the Middle East in response to that, including in Jordan. That is where President Biden was supposed to go for a summit with other leaders in the region before that part of the trip was canceled. What is the latest about this blast, and what type of evidence do we have about who is responsible?
Well, Savannah, it's been more than 12 hours now since that explosion, but the fog of war still hangs very heavily over the Al-Ahli hospital in Gaza City. Here's what we know. In the last couple of hours, the Israeli military has released evidence of what it says is proof that this was a Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket which misfired. They're pointing to two things. One, drone footage over the hospital, which they say shows that there is no crater outside the hospital. You would expect if this was an Israeli airstrike with a heavy ordnance that there would be some kind of crater. Two, they have released what they are saying is an intercepted conversation between two Hamas officials, where these officials seem to acknowledge that this was a misfired Palestinian rocket that caused the explosion. We should be really clear. NBC News is not able to verify either of these Israeli claims. We are not able to get to the hospital ourselves. The Israel-Gaza border is sealed. The Egypt-Gaza border is sealed, so we are not able to verify this ourselves. The Palestinians are adamant that this was an Israeli airstrike. They are saying that hundreds of people were killed. It is worth saying Hamas and Islamic Jihad do not acknowledge that their rockets do fall in Gaza, which does happen. But it is also worth saying that this is a much, much larger death toll than what we would normally associate with Palestinian rockets, which are deadly, which are dangerous, but they do not normally kill hundreds of people.
So, Monica, another question is the president expected to submit a $100 billion supplemental funding request to Congress in the coming days that would help Israel. That's according to two people familiar with the matter. What should we expect to be included in that funding, and how likely is it to get through, especially with a speakerless House?
Yeah, it's not, is the short answer to that. There's a paralysis on Capitol Hill right now in the House of Representatives that without it, they won't be able to advance much more than what they can do, which is essentially draft this supplemental request where the Biden administration is preparing to ask for something in the ballpark of $100 billion to address several things, including emergency aid for Israel, including continued funding for the war in Ukraine, now, of course, stretching on into its second year, and then also addressing some other domestic priorities, things like U.S. border security. And the question here now becomes, is there enough bipartisan support for something like this? We know that there have been differing views on several pieces of it. There's also a push to include some money for Taiwan. So that is why it is such a large number. But I am also told by somebody involved in this that it's not finalized yet because the contours could change, and that could also be shifted because of the president's time on the ground in Israel, depending on what more they are asking for. But we should expect to see at least what this supplemental request looks like sometime at the end of this week when the president does return from his travels. And then there's an expectation on Capitol Hill that they could move on that in the coming weeks. Remember, we're now up against that deadline for a potential government shutdown, which is tied to all of these spending priorities. Joe and Savannah.
Monica and Raph, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.